let me give you kind of an overview of what we are going to discuss. And first of all, I'm going to start with the end in mind. I'm going to tell you right up front, I'm going to give you that you have to file. That's going to be the very first slide so that some of you, 50% of you might leave us after the first slide. Do you have to file right now? That's really what you came to know. But then afterwards, I'm going to go through and say, here's what the CTA, the Corporate Transparency Act, was trying to accomplish, give you a little history so that you understand it a little bit better. They weren't off base in their intent. They may have been off base in their application, which is why it's being contested in the courts right now. But understanding that will, I think, help you understand why the rules are why they are what they are. We're going to talk about what businesses need to file, which ones are exempt, who and when the reports are due. Do you really need to file, and the penalties for enforcement if you don't? The court challenges. I'm going to go through. Here's what the courts are saying, and here's why it's been such a political ping pong ball. And then related to this is the new law about real estate transfer requirements. Whenever there's no debt on a property, there's requirements for that. And so we're going to cover that right toward the end, and we'll do some Q&A. So let's start off with the big question that all of you have, and that is, do I really have to comply with Corporate Transparency Act? So I looked at their website probably 15 minutes ago. Here is what their website, this is, you pull it up right now if you want to. It's fincen.gov/BOI. It stands for Beneficial Ownership Information Form. And I know you can't read that little alert, so I'm going to highlight it and blow it up. Here's what it says. In light of a recent federal court order, reporting companies are not currently required to file beneficial ownership information with FinCEN and are not subject to liability if they fail to do so while the order remains in force. So this is current. It changed tomorrow. They could. However, reporting companies may continue to voluntarily, if you'd like to, you can submit your reports. That's where it stands as of today, January 7th. Do I need to change mic? It looks like my video's off.
No, your video's on. You sound good, Don. I just wanted, your video looks good. Your mic's off. Sorry, guys. Just trying to make sure we get the sound a little better. A few of you said the sound was quiet, but yeah, just you're on mute. All right, try and switch your mic, Don. Sorry, guys. Switch your mic to the new mic there, Don.
Okay.
Great. Sounds good.
There we go. Is that better?
That sounds great, guys. Let us know. Thumbs up if that's okay for you guys. Let us know if you have any problems.
Okay, so as it sits today, January 7th, there we go. You're not currently required to, and the federal government isn't going to come after you for penalties. That said, could it change tomorrow? Yes. And I'll walk you through all the court cases and show you exactly where we are in a few minutes. So we'll get to that. But right now, if you want to bow out and go, I'll worry about this later, you can do that. But maybe it'd be good to stick around for a little while. Okay, let's go through the whole thing. First of all, a little history of the CTA. Again, Corporate Transparency Act. Congress enacted this in January 2001 as part of a National Defense Authorization Act. The Senate overrode President Trump's veto, so the Senate, 100 senators, voted 81-13, so very much bipartisan. They saw the need for it on September 29th. Oh, and by the way, Trump did veto it, but there was so much packed into that bill There was, oh my gosh, there was so much. I'm not sure today whether Trump is for it or against it. His administration has been somewhat silent on CTA and whether they're going to enforce it or not. So yes, he did initially vetoed it, but again, it's like some of those congressional bills that have 300 things inside of it, and I don't know. I don't know whether he was before it or against it. Then September 22nd, now it's enacted. Reporting began January of last year. It was endorsed initially by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. They saw the need for it. And it was also endorsed by the state of Delaware, which is traditionally a very secretive state. They don't disclose a lot of stuff. They saw the need for it. Let me tell you what they were trying to accomplish with the bill. Now, again, did they go too far? I don't know. But here was the intent. What they were trying to do is discover who owns companies. Is it possible that China and Russia and drug cartels know how to use business entities in the U.S. better than most businesses? Oh, yeah. Can they use Wyoming corporations and Wyoming LLCs and Wyoming statutory trusts and use them so that they're not disclosed? Nevada, Delaware, Wyoming, yes, the cartels are doing that. And so what they were trying to do is find out who was running the money laundering operations, the human trafficking, the sex trafficking. They're trying to find out who's buying great big tracts of land right next to our military bases. I'm concerned about that. And so election interference and power grid attacks, this was the intent of this, is to find out who owns the businesses that are conducting these types of businesses, what they're doing. So that was the intent. I am 100% for the intent. Not necessarily for how it's being implemented, but I understand the need for the intent of the Corporate Transparency Act. So with that in mind, and I have had a lot of people ask about what were they trying to do, that's what they were trying to do. So according to the rules, and I know it's suspended, I get that. But if you'll circle this slide and memorize this or cut and paste or something, when I get all done with the animation on this and add all the pieces, this slide will answer most of the questions that we're getting on our hotline. All businesses formed to conduct business in the U.S. by filing a document with your state Secretary of State or similar office, which some of you, it's called the Division of Corporations or the Department of Business, or I don't know, whatever it is, but it's always under the Secretary of State. Those entities would include any corporation, it would include LLCs, limited partnerships, and most statutory trusts. Those things are formed by an application with the Secretary of State. It's going to be called Articles of Incorporation or Articles of Formation or Articles or Limited Partnership. It's always done with it so that the state recognizes it. All right. Now, any entity not created by such a state filing is not required to CTA, such as most land trusts, estate planning trusts, and it doesn't matter if it's a marital trust, if it's a Qbert trust, whether it's a Q-tip trust or a special needs trust, or if it's done for estate planning purposes, regardless of what your attorney called it. It could be a special residence trust. None of these are required to file because trusts are usually a silent, quiet, private thing. Fictitious names do go through the Secretary of State, but they're not required to file. Professional licenses are generally controlled by some state organization, but they're not required to file. What is required is almost exclusively every LLC, most every corporation, limited partnership, statutory trust. So if you're asking, does my land trust have, no, land trust doesn't. My estate planning, my living trust, whether it's revocable or irrevocable, doesn't matter. Estate planning trust, these are not required. That should answer a bulk of your questions. Okay. And what is it? What information are they looking for? Well, they're looking for the beneficial owners. They want to know who owns this LLC or who owns this corporation. And what that means is they're looking for anybody who exercises substantial control over the entity or owns or controls 25% or more, or is the person submitting the application, or for the vice president or whatever title, who's in charge of submitting the report. Whether you actually submit it or not, maybe your secretary did it. If that's the case, the secretary and the person in charge of creating, filling out the report, those are the people who need to report. Okay? Those are referred to as beneficial owners. I know some of them aren't owners, but now, what if I own 15%? Not required. What if, as long as I don't exercise substantial control? So look at that slide. I think that's as clear as we can make it. Here are the beneficial owners who need to report if this law isn't suspended. I don't know. Well, okay. We're making some assumptions. I hope you understand that. Let me give you the deadlines of when the initial deadlines. Again, everything is suspended. So any business entity that existed before January 1st of last year. So I set up an LLC 5 years ago. Okay, then yes, you're required. I set it up, 2 years ago. Yes, anything before January 1st had to file, and you were given a year to do it. So that deadline just passed January 1st of this year. So anything prior to 2024, you were supposed to file last year. New entities formed in 2024, you had 90 days to do it. And entities formed this year, anything after 2024, so 2025, and from this point on, you have 30 days. And any amendments, if I file an amended articles of organization or an amended articles of formation or amended whatever, then you've got 30 days. Those were the initial deadlines. Again, I know everything's suspended, but those were the deadlines. Okay. What information were they looking for? Well, okay, so you had the reporting companies, and I'll describe that in a minute. Anybody that had to report, here's what they were looking for. They wanted to know the company name. Now, you've already approved that with the Secretary of State, so the Secretary of State knows it. Any trade names or DBAs that you have, your business address, again, your Secretary of State should have that. But what they were doing is creating a national database that was only allowed to be used by federal enforcement agencies, criminal invest. So I'll get to that in a second. So they were looking for the state of formation, and your tax ID number. That's what the reporting companies, again, corporations, LLCs, statutory trusts, limited partnerships. That's what they had to submit. And then they wanted to know who the owners were, and I described the owners. They wanted your full legal name. They wanted your date of birth, a complete address, some type of government ID. Remember, your state has already issued your driver's license. The federal government, Secretary of State's issued you your passport. So it's not information that they don't have. It's just that they were trying to collect it into one database. And the information, according to the law, is only available to law enforcement agencies and financial institutions with the consent of the individual. So if you were going to get a business loan, my guess is, if this is ever fully passed, and to get a business loan, my guess is you're going to have to submit that and let the bank see who the owners are. But that's currently the law. Now, I've listened to all the conspiracy theories. Is this ever going to be hacked? Well, I don't know. Is Congress ever going to expand it and allow other people to? Here's the current law, and it's only available right now, this database, to law enforcement agencies. Is that going to be abused? I don't know. But remember, when the government really wants to keep a secret, they're pretty good at it. Last week, my wife and I drove through the heart of Nevada, and I couldn't find Area 51, but it's supposed to be there. I don't know where, but it's supposed to be there. While we saw all the alien gift shops and stuff. Who killed JFK? I don't know. What was on Donald Trump's tax returns? I don't know. This is supposed to be as secure as the IRS website is, and so that's the intent. Anyway, for whatever it's worth. So, what businesses are required to file? Well, all businesses that were created with a form to the Secretary of State, unless you're exempt. And here are the major companies that are exempt. Large corporations, 20 people or more, 20 employees or more, revenue exceeding $5 million. Why? Because there's already so much scrutiny on your tax returns, and your tax returns are already providing the information that they need. Nonprofit corporations, nonprofit entities have substantial reporting requirements, and so they probably already have all the information you need. Political organizations, tax-exempt trusts, certain ones, public companies, insurance companies. Again, the banks are so highly regulated that they already have the information. They don't need to have any more. And take a look at all of these things. Now, if you think you're exempt, because my company falls under one of these exemption categories, make sure, because that 314-page document is extremely complex, and even the best attorneys that I know, scratch their heads and go, well, I think you're exempt. Well, make sure, because the penalties are pretty stiff if you don't. Now, there's one exemption on here that I didn't list because it's on the next slide, and that is inactive entities. Oh, good. I haven't used my LLC for 3 or 4 years, and so am I inactive? Well, they have a very strange definition of inactive. So here's what it means. Inactive means it was created before January 1st, 2020, and it hasn't engaged in any business activities, and it's not owned by a foreign person, directly or indirectly, and there's no change of ownership in the preceding 12 months, and I haven't sent or received funds greater than $1,000 in the preceding 12 months, and it doesn't hold any assets, including ownership in any other entities. If you can qualify for those 6 things, then you can say that my LLC, I set it up, I just haven't done anything. If you can claim all 6 of those things, then you can be exempt. And I don't know most of us that are exempt. Okay, now, this exemption does not apply to inactive, and no matter how you define it. Well, it hasn't done anything. But if you created it after January 1st, 2020, it's not inactive. It was created for some reason. It doesn't meet their definition, regardless of any money. Well, I set up the LLC, but I didn't I didn't ever set up a bank account. I didn't put money in. I didn't transfer property. That doesn't matter. It's not. It doesn't meet those guidelines. It's not exempt. Okay, so if you can qualify under all 6 of those, and good luck on that, there you go. Now, if I wanted to file, remember the government is still taking applications. I'm not requiring it right now. There's no penalties if I don't. But if you would like to, I'm going to show you how to do it. You would go to www.fincen. It stands for the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. I go to FinCEN, and there are such good videos. There are such frequently asked questions and reporting forums and everything you need. And in fact, single guys, there's some really cute girls teaching, here's how to do it, do this, and then do that. Oh, I don't care, whatever. But they walk you through it, and it should be, they say, about a 20-minute process. Now, I've done it probably in 10 minutes, and I've talked to people that it took them a half day to do it and to figure it out. But if you follow their instruction videos, it's actually pretty easy. Now, if you don't want to do it, and you've got a CPA or accountant or an attorney who created your entity or is doing your taxes, most likely they'll do that just to keep your business, or maybe there'll be a $100, $200 fee to do this for you. Most accountants, CPAs, attorneys will do this just as part of their service. Okay. Now, if you don't do it, and this gets reinstated again, there are some penalties, and I'm not sure how, because it's been up and down and in and out, I'm not sure how strong the government is going to enforce the penalties. But here are the penalties, and I can't tell you what they're going to do. I can just tell you what they wrote. And that is, if you are required to file and you don't file, there's a penalty of $500 per day, $500 per day per entity, up to $10,000. It's pretty substantial. Again, I understand the purpose of the law. They're trying to look for, they're trying to cut down the drug cartels and the I understand the reasons. I'm not sure how they're going to enforce that. Is it going to be kind of soft coming into this, and maybe they're going to give us a little wave, a little pat you on the head if you don't do it the first time? And I don't know. I can just say, here's the law, here's the penalties. Okay. Now let's talk about the court challenges. The very first one that came about was done by the National Small Business Association. This was NSBA, if you want to look it up, United versus Janet Yellen. And the NSBA is an association of 6,500 small businesses. And the ruling came down out of a district court in Alabama saying, yeah, this is unconstitutional because it exceeds what Congress should be allowed to enforce. And so, but that was only good for the 6,500 members. If you were a member of the National Small Business Association before March 2nd, then you're exempt. If you weren't, then it doesn't matter. All other companies are still required to comply. Notice that the court's decision does not impact similar laws, like New York has laws. Illinois has enacted laws very similar to this, and the court decision does not impact your state laws, only the federal law. And the Justice Department is still appealing, and so this is still pending, even though, I don't know what's going to happen with that. Now, since that court case, where they found that the federal government had exceeded really their powers. Then it's been challenged in Ohio, Maine, Michigan, Massachusetts, Texas, and that top cop shop one, the one in district in Texas. That's the one that is causing all the problems right now, and that's the one that's being appealed and being appealed the decision again. And now, besides those pending lawsuits, and there may be more that I'm not aware of, you've also got two laws pending in Congress. And if the new, Senate and House decide to act on these, you've got the Small Business Red Tape Relief Act, and you've got the Repealing Big Brother Overreach Act. And I don't know what's going to happen with those, and I don't know how fast Congress is going to act on these, but those are pending congressional bills right now. Okay, so the current state, with everything pending, here's what sort of happened last month. And I appreciate you sticking with me, even though I gave you the end result right from the beginning. Last month was kind of a ping pong. It was back and forth and back and forth. And December 3rd, this is the district court, this is the top cop shop case. And what they did, the district court says preliminary injunction blocking enforcement. You know what? Companies nationwide don't have to worry about it. And federal government can't enforce it. Now, that was appealed. So December 23rd, this was in the appeals court from the circuit court in New Orleans. They overturned that and said, "Oh, just kidding. Yes, you do have to comply, but we'll give you a couple more weeks." And they extended the deadline for all companies nationwide till January 13th. And 3 days later, they came back and went, let's reverse that decision. So as it sits right now, we don't have to comply with this, and the federal government can't penalize us if we don't. That's why I showed you that this is what's currently on FinCEN's website. And again, I'm going to blow that up for you right there and say, look, in light of recent court decisions, reporting companies are not currently required to file beneficial ownership. However, we'll still take your application if you choose to submit it. That's where we currently stand. Is that going to change tomorrow? I don't know. Unlikely. I think we're going to have to go up to the Supreme Court. I think it's going to take a few months. Is it likely that there will be some form of this? And maybe considering all of the abuses that are happening in the country, maybe they're going to find that it's warranted. I don't know. That's beyond my little level of but I don't know. It's above my pay grade to decide what's going to happen. But currently, as of today, January 7th, 2025, we're not required to comply. Now, somewhat related to this, and in just a minute, we're going to open this up to Q&A. If you have questions that we haven't covered, I've tried to be really clear, but if we haven't covered things, I'm happy to answer questions. Somewhat related to the Corporate Transparency Act was another law that was the Bank Secrecy Act, requiring all real estate transfers that don't have a mortgage attached to them. They wanted them to report also to FinCEN. So it's confusing because you're at the Corporate Transparency Act and you're submitting all of your beneficial ownership information forms to FinCEN, and you're also got the real estate transfers also reporting to FinCEN. So this law doesn't go into effect until January 1st of this year. So you really got 11 and a half months before we even have to worry about this one. Is this going to be overturned? Is this going to be challenged? I don't know. But right now, the way the law reads, and again, it's not enforced yet, All real estate transfers when there's no mortgage attached, no non-financed residential real estate must be reported to FinCEN. So what they're looking for is, again, who owns the military, the land around the military bases. If you understand just a little bit of asset protection, you understand land trust can be a great shield for who owns things, who owns real estate. And the history of that is it really the land trusts were adopted in the U.S. in the Roaring '20s, 100 years ago, by the Chicago mobs because they wanted to own half of Chicago and nobody knows who owned them. Understanding that history, there's some great rules for land trusts, and you can transfer a property into a land trust and then sell the beneficial ownership or to somebody else, and they transfer it to somebody else, and they transfer it. But on title, we've kind of secured it. We've kind of hidden that. So land trusts are a great tool. So are Nevada corporations. So are Wyoming LLCs. So are Delaware. They're great tools, but obviously they're being abused. What they're looking for here in real estate transfers is real estate, real estate, not bank accounts or brokerage accounts or anything else, but they're wanting this to be reported. Now, there are some exemptions to this. Transfers into an estate planning trust, which most of you will have, and again, it won't matter whether it's revocable or irrevocable or what they call it, a special needs trust, an AB marital trust, a bypass trust, a QDOT or QTIP, or there's so many hundreds of names for estate planning. But if it goes into an estate planning trust, that's exempt. Transfers between spouses is exempt. Transfers resulting from the death of an owner. Transfers incident to a divorce or bankruptcy or supervised by a bankruptcy judge, or transfers to a qualified intermediary because I'm going to do a 1031 exchange. All of those are exempt, but anything else is going to be required to file a FinCEN report. Now, again, this rule has not been affected by the current court challenges because that dealt with the Corporate Transparency Act, not the Bank Secrecy Act. So if this doesn't change, this will still be required. And most of the time when you go to close on a property or you go to sell a property, if there's no mortgage on the property, the title companies, the attorneys, whoever's doing that will fill out the report, probably not you. Okay. So let's conclude real quick. As of today, January 7th, businesses are not required to comply with the CTA's reporting requirements. And if you will continue to attend or you come back to attend the 3-day summit on occasion and the webinars that we continue to teach, we will keep you updated on the current ping-pong battle going on in the courts on the CTA. If you'd like to register for any of those summits, come see us at Protect Wealth Academy. And with that, let's open this up to Q&A. And I don't know whether there are any right now. Kendall, do we have any?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions here, Don. Can you hear me okay?
All right. So
Yeah,
I created
there's
lots
a lot
of
of good questions here, Don.
And I can't hear you.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead. Let's make sure. You should be able to hear me okay now.
Are you unmuted?
Yes, I'm unmuted. So I think might be. Yep, works good here. By the way, guys, I did put it in the chat the link to our next asset protection summit that's coming up. So obviously this is important. Don and I talked about this. The reason we have this is because the next summit, we will be covering some of this at the next summit with Clint Coons, and Don obviously did a good job tonight, but it's changing daily is the problem. Don, can you hear me now okay?
I can hear you because you're shouting through the wall, but I can't hear you through the system.
Okay. It looks like if you guys can hear me okay, do a thumbs up. I'll help Don answer some of these questions. Okay, so they can hear me, Don. So I don't know. It's works for everybody else, Don.
Well, something's happened, and I also can't
Probably,
see the questions.
yeah, just switch your audio, Don, and I can get into some of the questions. We do have lots. Um, One of the questions I think a lot of people have in general is, they talk about Disney. Disney bought up all that land in Florida, right? Remember? And the anonymity, because nobody knew that was Disney buying up all that land in Florida
Correct.
because they didn't want the prices to skyrocket. So that was a big deal for anonymity. So anonymity is a big deal. Will this affect anonymity at all for people?
Well, remember that this is a federal database. Not everyone has access to this. It's not a matter of public record. Land trusts are still not required to comply with CTA. And so if you're using land trusts or if you're using estate planning trusts, if you're using a Wyoming entity for anonymity, this is not an open database that everyone gets to see. And so these we still like anonymity. We like real estate investors to own stuff. We like personal residence trust because it doesn't show up on your name. All of those things still apply. It's just that there's a federal database open to criminal investigators. But it's like the IRS. The IRS knows how much money you made, but unless you disclose it, nobody else knows. It's not you're not posting this on Facebook, your tax returns. Um, Everything that we've always taught about anonymity is exactly still in place. It's just you can't hide from the federal government, which really, if they did their research, the state governments and the federal governments and the IRS, and they could combine all of the stuff together if they did their homework a little bit better. It's just they're putting it into one federal database. I don't see it as a big issue as long as that federal database never gets hacked. Kendall, I wish I could see the questions, and I can't.
Okay,
Am I
I'll read
doing
it to
something
you.
wrong? Do
Yeah,
you
we
want to
have
wander
quite a
in
bit.
here?
Michael asked, I don't see the personal property trust on the list of exemptions. Do I still need to file?
Okay, a personal property trust was not created by a state agency. So you didn't go to the Secretary of State to create a personal property trust. I didn't list all of the different types of trusts, but if it wasn't created by a state organization or by a Secretary of State, an application, then it's not you're not required to file a CTA report.
Okay. And Greco's asking, whose birthday do you need to put on there? The lawyer who drew up the agreement or the manager of the LLC?
Well, yes, anyone if you've got three partners and they all own 25% or more, and the person filing the report, and the person who is responsible, whether maybe the president of the company, whether they have ownership or not, all of them you would need their birthdays and a government issued ID, their full name. You would need that for all of them.
Wow. Cool. Seems just so intrusive. All right. What website did they go to again, Don? Do you want to put that back up there?
Sure, I can do that. Kendall, am I doing something wrong that I can't? Oh, you don't want that one. You want, where are we at?
There we go.
That's the site you'd go to fill out the report.
So up there top, fincen.gov/BOI.
Correct.
Yeah, and you can even just Google search BOI or FinCEN and you'll find it. No problem.
And you can Google this. How do I comply with CTA? And information is all over. Google knows.
Google knows.
Ask the
They know
Google.
all.
Yep.
Okay. If I have an LLC as a holding company for rental properties and move them all to a land trust, do I have to still file?
The LLC will have to file. The land trust won't. The owner. But if you're putting a property into a land trust, which is going to be owned by an LLC, the land trust doesn't have to file, but the LLC does.
What if you
And if
take
that
them out of the
LLC is owned
LLC?
by a holding company, that has to file too.
What if you take them completely away from the LLC? Completely get rid of the LLC, put them in the land trust. You still have to file.
Yeah, the problem is that the land trust, oh, well, if you've already created one,
Yeah.
created an LLC, yes, you have to go back and file it, unless it's been totally inactive for the last 5 years. My daughter and I have a business. She didn't do anything this last year, not a single transaction. She didn't make a dime. The only expense I had was a tax return from the previous year, but we still have to file because we don't reach or meet the qualifications that we talked about to be inactive. So the LLC, even if I shut it down today, okay, I'm still going to have to file because it's not inactive, and it doesn't go back to 2000. It doesn't meet the requirements. You can shut it down, you can claim it's inactive, but unless it meets those 6 requirements, it's not inactive, and it should file. Again, everything's suspended. I get that, but yes.
Okay. BUR reporting requires an EIN or a TIN. Abraham's asking, this LLC is a subsidiary of a C corp that does, or an LLC that does not have an EIN, but I still filed using, without the EIN. Am I compliant? If the LLC does not have an EIN,
Okay,
I
Kendall, how
think
about if
this.
you open your door so I can hear you?
Sure, sure.
Because I'm really not hearing anything through our system.
Oh, and your volume's not working, huh? Sorry about that.
No, it's not. So the corporation would have to file, and any LLC that's been created, whether you think it's inactive or not, whether you ever set up a bank account, whether you actually funded it with a piece of property, it's probably going to have to file. Any LLC.
Yeah, and Don, you probably just need to change your speakers, by the way. I think when you plugged in that new mic, it went to that as a speaker. Makes no sense, but it most likely did. So go to your audio and switch speakers. That might help. Okay.
Switch to test speaker and microphone, leave audio, select the speaker.
There you go. Select a speaker and select the one that should be your computer. That should work.
How
It's
about
okay.
that?
I don't know. See if that works. That we love technology. We do when it works. Anyway,
Well,
uh,
he loves technology. I'm old school.
you're good at it, Don. You're one of the best out there. It's
Oh
true,
my
actually.
gosh, I'm not either.
We have a lot of questions about HOAs. Are HOAs exempt? What would make an HOA have to comply? There's so many regulations on HOAs. I imagine they would, but are they exempt?
Okay, how was the HOA created? Is it a corporation? Is it a limited partnership? Is it an LLC? If it's just what? How was that formed? If it was an LLC or corporation or limited partnership or statutory trust, it was created by filing a form with the Secretary of State. If it's just a group of people got together and they formed an HOA, but it's really kind of a general partnership. It's just kind of an agreement. Then it was never formally formed with the Secretary of State. Therefore, it wouldn't.
Whew. All right, lots of questions. Okay. An anonymous attendee mentioned that Donald Trump tax returns were leaked by Charles Littlejohn. Yeah, it's true. Guys, it's true. We're relying on not being hacked when this is filed, and I think that's a big concern for all of us. But you're right, Don. Good point. Maybe they need to think this through a little better because we're trying to avoid money laundering and property being purchased next to a base. That's really tricky. All right. Okay. If you set up an LLC before January of 2020, but the only activity is you paying yearly dues, is that active or inactive? Just like you said.
I don't know. Let's go back to that slide on inactive entities. Okay, there you go. That's that's the best guideline I can give you is that slide. You can screenshot it if you want. So you set it up before January 1st, and it didn't engage in any business activities, and is not owned by any foreign people, and there's no change of ownership, and it hasn't received funds of $1,000, and doesn't hold any assets, then you could be exempt. That's the best I can tell you.
And the hard part is none of this has been enforced yet. None of this has gone to the courts yet. No fines have been filed yet. It's all so new. And so we really don't know. It's a lot of it unknown. I think when in doubt, unless you're absolutely totally scared about giving your personal information, which they have with your driver's license, unless you're totally scared about that, I would say when in doubt, file if you have an LLC. Wouldn't you say, Don?
Yeah, let's wait and see what the courts say, and then there'll be a grace period. But if you're
Yes.
required to file, and if you're not sure if it's inactive or not, remember it's a complex law, and either get some help, some professional help, and hide behind their attorney license or their CPA license and go, well, he told me I didn't have to. Either that or just file the report.
I agree. And Michael probably, Don's right. Hold off until we know for sure. You can hold off. So,
Yep.
yeah, it's tricky. Okay, Marta, if I qualify as an exempt LLC, meeting all 6 criteria, can I activate the LLC at a later date without penalty? And yes, that's what we're saying here is you can hold off until we know for sure.
Yes, I would. Yes.
Do you have the states that are exempt right now, Don? Tiana's asking, are there states that are exempt right now?
No, there's no states that are exempt.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
But
Yeah, so
but some states require a lot more information than others
yes.
do. And so New York, you've got to you got to give the names of your kids and their birthdays. And no, I'm just kidding. But and Wyoming, you have to give the name of the LLC. You have to give what is it, the registered agent and their address, and that's about all. I think there's 4 questions. I missed one, but Ohio is about the same thing. They're not asking for a lot of information, just to file to apply for an LLC. Other states, Florida asks a lot of questions. Michigan asks a lot of questions. Hawaii asks a lot of questions. But there's no states that are exempt from the CTA right now.
Okay. And Terry's asking if they don't voluntarily comply right now, in this case, an active, are they held responsible retroactively for not filing by the end of 2024?
The best thing I can do is just show you
They're saying
here's
no
what
on
their
the
website says is that they can't currently enforce it.
Okay, all
They're
right. Is there
not subject
anything
to liability if they fail to do so while the order remains in force. If that order is lifted, this temporary injunction is lifted, then there'll be a grace period, and you go, okay, it's due by this date, and at that point we'll probably hold another webinar and say, here's what you got to do, and here's how to do it. Okay.
Okay. Anything specific how this might affect house flippers?
Well, it depends on what you're doing. If you're setting up a new LLC for every house that you flip, or I'm saying here's the houses that I'm going to flip in 2025, and I'm setting up an LLC. Yes, that's going to affect you. But just flipping houses, if you're going to flip all the houses in your own name, which we would, as asset protection specialists, we would consider stupid, but it's only when you're setting up an LLC or a corporation or a statutory trust or a limited partnership. That, regardless, I don't care what activity you're doing. If you're setting up those entities, then you'd have to comply.
Okay. And Al's asking for real estate reporting, are sales before 2025 exempt?
For real estate transfers, is that what he's
Yes.
asking?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's anything before 2025 is not required. And in fact, anything before December 1st of 2025. So you do all the real estate transactions you want to do right now, and you're not required to file these reports. But come December 1st, then those will be required unless it's exempt.
Okay, Jerry's asking a question about filing and not being able to confirm. He's working with Anderson Advisors. They filed his BOI reporting, but he doesn't have a confirmation saying yes, you did in fact get reported. It was actually filed. Basically, like a stamp number or something, confirmation number saying you reported. And Jerry, you're saying you can't find that anywhere. That's the hard part. Is Anderson can answer that question. We can answer that question. If you're not getting that, that's going to be something they have to iron out the bugs with this new
Anyone
program.
who files the report gets an immediate confirmation saying, yes, we've accepted it. I don't know if it's immediate or not, but I've seen the reports. And if you don't have it, go back to Anderson because they should have have it. If you're part of Anderson's network and you've hired them to set up your LLCs, it's just part of their I don't know I don't know about an LLC they created 5 years ago, but that's part of their process now. And they should, if they filed the report, they should have the confirmation, and they should be able to provide it for you.
And I think you answered this one. Does a simple S corporation have to file? Pretty much, yes.
An S corporation, you filed it. You have it because you went to the Secretary of State and filed an articles of incorporation or an articles of formation if you live in Texas or Alabama, whatever it's called. So the answer is anytime you're doing a corporation, it's in existence because the state allowed it to be. You filed an application, so yes, it would be required.
Okay, and is there an annual requirement to file?
No, there's no. There's a requirement if you change the ownership, or if you sell your business, or you add a partner and they own more than 25%, or if you change. You hire a new CEO, then yes, those. But if nothing changes, then there's no annual reporting. And those changes, remember, were due 30 days after you make the change. FinCEN wants to know who owns your business, and if it changes, or who the controlling parties are. If that changes, then you'd be required to file.
Okay, and so if an LLC was formed in Nevada but transferred to Wyoming for the actual BOI reporting, do I still state that it was formed in Nevada even though it no longer resides in Nevada? That's a tricky one. It depends on what it's asking for. Original formation detail versus existing detail, correct?
I think you're looking for existing. And if it's ever questioned, you can go, well, yeah, this was Nevada, but we changed the domicile to be Wyoming, and so I don't see that there's a problem. You're fully disclosing everything that you need to disclose.
And there's some confusion around that. So a lot of people are asking about, okay, so when I have several real estate properties in one LLC, am I giving the BOI information about the LLC, or am I giving the information about, me personally? And you kind of answered that. It's all interested parties that may have interested, a beneficial interest, correct?
Let me go back
So it's
to,
kind of both, basically, is what we're saying here, is you're giving the personal beneficial interest parties and, the entity in regards to that as
okay,
well. It's really both.
so I would give, if I've got 4 properties in one LLC, I would give the name of the company here, XYZ LLC, and there's no trademarks, or if there are, the business address, the state of formation, if it's Wyoming or wherever you're, Tennessee, Nebraska, I don't know, whatever, and the tax ID number. And then you would also give, here are the owners or the controlling parties, they're called beneficial owners, and you would give that, and it would be all on one report. But that would be your required information. Not for every property, but for every LLC.
Right. And Caesar's asking what I think a lot of us are asking, what about FOIA requests, right? Government FOIA requests. Aren't they required by law to disclose information? And in this case, the law was passed so that it still remains anonymous technically in their database unless hacked, right?
Yes, that's my
Okay.
understanding.
That's great. Is it possible to create an LLC without filing with the Secretary of State?
No, that's how we do LLCs.
That's what makes it valid.
That's what makes it valid. That's a good question. I wish there were, but no, that's what the Secretary of State, you're abiding by the laws. Again, if you're going to North Dakota, your LLC, North Dakota, every state has laws for LLCs, but but to get the asset protection, to get all of the benefits of an LLC, the shield, the
It's a tricky
charging order
one.
protections, the
Yeah.
tax advantages. You have to abide by the law. You have to create the LLC, and you're going to do that by two ways. You're going to file an application with the Secretary of State for an LLC, and that probably it's be called different names, but probably the Articles of Organization. And then you get an EIN number. That gives the federal government notice that you're doing it, and it gives you the right to exist in that state. That's how an LLC or a corporation is formed. And if you don't do it that way, then you don't get the law, you don't get the benefits and the protections and the tax advantages that you were hoping to get.
Okay.
Again, I'm not so concerned about a federal. And I know that's easy for me to say, but I've studied this for 25, 26 years, and I'm not concerned about a federal database. The federal government gave me my passport number. They know it. The state gave me my driver's license number. The IRS has the information of who owns my S corporation or my partnership anyway. It's just everything is in one database so the criminal enforcement agents could it get hacked. I get all that, but I'm not all that concerned about it.
But what about your cross-border gangster operation, Don? That's not fair.
Well, I that's going to be disrupted. No
No more
no
running drugs,
question.
guys. Okay. Very, very good question. So, can you use for filing purposes, do you have to have a physical address or can you use a virtual office, PO box, that sort of thing?
Most always, secretaries of state don't want a virtual office most of the time. They want a physical address. And if you think about what the role of a resident agent is, and I think you're going to find the same thing here. A post office box isn't, they want to be able to walk up and serve a summons to you somewhere. And a post office box isn't going to work, and a virtual address, the UPS store probably isn't going to work. They want a physical address. And that could be your brothers, your sisters, that could be so, I don't care, it could be, I don't know, your best friend or something. Uh, Often you'll use an attorney, you'll use an accountant. If you don't want to give them your home address or your business address, but yes, everything that I've read is that they want a complete current physical address, certainly not a post office box.
Okay, so a lot of people are asking, is there a fee to do this? Can you help us with this? A lot of this actually will be covered in the summit. Yes, if you have an accountant or attorney do a lot of this, there's a fee, but there's no fee to report online yourself. But we'll cover this in detail during the summit, right? Don, Clint, yourself, other, maybe Toby will cover this in detail, especially if there's more changes.
So here's we've had Amanda Winalda, a brilliant attorney out of Anderson that's in charge of their trust department, is also she's in charge of their corporate transparency compliance. If it comes down to yes, you have to file this, we will have Amanda back on again. I talked to her a little bit earlier today. She'll be on. We'll bring somebody back and we'll say, okay, here's exactly what you need to do. So keep your ear to the ground and stay tuned to what we're doing. Stay, if you see Facebook posts and emails from us saying, I need to do it now, we'll hold another webinar. We'll teach you how to do it, but right now it's not required. Do I see it changing in the next few months? No, I really don't. I think this is going to have to go up to the Supreme Court, and that could take months and maybe a year or two. I don't know. But right now we're not having to do it, and so don't get too excited about it. We will be there. We're not going away. We've been here 25 something years. We'll walk you through it if we ever get to that point. Okay.
Great. So if basically someone's asking if you eliminate your LLC and pull out all assets, do you still have to file a Corporate Transparency Act?
Yes, you absolutely do, because you're not exempt unless inactive. There's the requirements. I dissolved the LLC today. No, I'm sorry. The government still wants your report. Now, again, it's suspended. I get that, but if it's enacted, just shutting down the LLC and making it inactive isn't going to work for you. Sorry, nice try.
Yeah, and a lot of still questions asking, if I filed before 2020, don't have an EIN, do I still have to file the report? It's tricky. Yeah, go off your slide there, Don. I mean, it's really, that's all we know is what's required to file. If you file with the state, basically, yeah, kind of.
Here's the rules. How it's going to be enforced, I have no idea because they haven't enforced it yet. What are the courts going to decide? I don't know. As all I can teach you, here's the rules. And so comply with them or just file the report. Okay.
Yeah, and Al makes a good point. If you change or update or change addresses, you have to update the BOI with that as well. It's kind of annoying. It really is. But
that's
if you
correct.
change your address in the state you live, you got to update that too. It's just one more place you have to update.
Correct.
Ooh. Okay, so a lot of you are saying you'll attend the summit. Yeah, I think Don and I would recommend that highly. Unfortunately, we're in a bit of a limbo right now, so the answer is maybe on a lot of this. I guess the real answer is, Don, we don't know right now, but you're seeing with both the BOI and the non-transfer real estate act, everything you said coming down, Bank Secrecy Act, excuse me, that Don, right? That's it's coming down the pipeline somewhere.
It is, and this is going to be an interesting year in so many ways. We're not sure what Trump's really going to do, and we don't know what the Congress is going to do, and we don't know that. It's January 7th. Strap in. This is going to be an exciting year. I'm looking forward to it. I don't know what's going to happen, but right now we don't have to comply. That's the
Yes,
best
and the question is, a lot of you right now are asking, is the summit online? Yes, this is a Zoom one. Thankfully, you can do it from your couch, from your phone, from your iPad, wherever you're at, on the beach, whatever. You can jump in. That's a beautiful thing with Zoom. Don and I miss seeing you in person, for sure. But yes, it does make it convenient to come in anywhere in the world. We'd love to see you if you can make it. And one more question here, Don. A lot of people are asking about the anonymity. So if there's a lawsuit, can someone go to the BOI and subpoena the BOI and get your personal information?
No, it's only available to criminal enforcement agencies. That's a big deal. No, attorneys don't have access to it. Creditors don't have access to it. The only ones that have access to it is criminal. So the FBI, your state and local, if they could ask for the information of who owns the businesses, but attorneys, it's not available to them. I'm sorry. So the anonymity factor, I really like, and I really think it's still in force. I can hold assets in a Wyoming entity, again, Nevada, Delaware, wherever. Think for just a minute. Who owns all the big casinos in Las Vegas? Well, I don't know. It could be the mafia. We don't know. That's not going to go away. That anonymity piece is there to stay. Why? Well, too many people have too much to lose. They do have to report now to the federal government. But who owns the casinos? That's not going to go away. Who owns your 3 rental properties? If you're setting it up correctly, that's not going to go away. Yes, the federal government wants to shut down drug trafficking and sex trafficking, and again, I understand the purpose for it, but it's not gonna ruin legitimate asset protection anonymity. Do it well. Just we love working with Anderson, and we love working with the attorneys that we do, because they know how to do it right. But no, it's not going to ruin your anonymity. Please get that out of your mind. It's a federal database available to criminal enforcement agencies. That's all it is.
What if you're held criminally liable? Then that's a different story.
If you're held criminally liable, then yep. If you're doing if you're doing illegal activities, you would want them to be able to, well, you wouldn't want it. Everyone else would want you to be able to break into it.
Yeah, you wouldn't want them. That's true. So don't be doing things that would get you criminally liable for anything, people. That's the bottom line here. Yes. Okay. One more question here, Don. A good one here. Ellen's asking if, for example, they have an HOA association or a group that changes officers yearly. A lot of companies do. Do they have to report that as well yearly?
If that HOA, and likely it was set up as an LLC, then yes. Remember, let's go back to this. Is it this one? Nope, it's not that one. There you go. All amendments to previous filings, if this is enacted again, all previous amendments have to be, you have to file the report within 30 days. So if you change the officer, then you would have to file an additional BOI report. Yep.
Okay. And there's still a lot of questions coming in about if they have an LLC with no EIN, can they still file? And I believe, yes, you still can. You just don't have the EIN with it.
Doesn't matter if you get the EIN. It doesn't matter if you funded it. It doesn't matter if unless it meets those 6 exemptions, you set up an LLC. I don't care whether it owns anything or not. I set up a shell. I never funded it. They want to know.
And someone's asking, I filed for an LLC, received a TIF number. Is that the same as an EIN number? Maybe that's TIN number you're thinking there?
TIN would be for a non-resident citizen. An ITIN number, I assume, is what they're saying.
Right. Yep. And Elizabeth makes a good point. The casinos have more than 25 employees. They're exempt. That's true.
Well, there you go. That's right.
Okay. Karen says, I recommend setting up an ID for each person. That's true. She says basically put in the ID number for each one. It makes it much easier for filing the BOI reports. That's a good point, Karen.
Absolutely, it is. What you're doing is you each individual. Okay, I probably own, I don't know, a half dozen LLCs, a limited partner. Some are taxes, S corps, and some are C corps, and so I would file an individual as an individual. That way, I'm only giving my driver's license or my passport once, and then after that, every entity, yep, I own 25% of this. I'm giving them my ID number, and they've got it. And so, whenever you have multiple entities, that EIN number, or I'm sorry, that personal identification number will save you a lot of time.
Okay, I love it. And one more question here. I think Eric makes a good point. They feel like their LLC has been inactive, meets all requirements for actually being inactive, so potentially doesn't need to file. Um, is the best idea to just go ahead and contact the Secretary of State and shut those down just to get that out of the way so you have no liability penalty in the future?
I think so. And again, if you really think that there's going to be a potential of a penalty, just check with a professional and say, okay, I think I meet all the six requirements. Would you just verify this for me? I don't want to get hit with $500 a day. I'd rather pay somebody $200 to just verify and make sure it was done right. What they're going to charge, but just I don't know. I wish I knew how this is going to come down. I
Yeah,
can only tell you here's what the law is, and I don't know how it's going to be enforced. I don't know what
yeah.
penalties. I don't know how stiff they're going to be. Maybe there's leniency. Maybe I don't think we're all business owners, real estate investors are going to be in jail next year. But but again, go back to the intent of the law. They're trying to shut down on criminal activity. And if you're required to comply, I'm going to comply on all the entities that I own because I don't see it as a huge issue. The IRS hasn't leaked my information. I don't think that they will. Maybe they will. Conspiracy. I think we're safe.
Yeah, it's
That's my
true.
thought.
We hope so. Abraham made a point that the system actually doesn't allow you to complete the report if you don't have an EIN number. And so maybe they're basing that off the federal database that looks at your EIN number. But the problem is if you file with the state, technically you still have to comply. That's a tricky one.
Don't know the answer on that. Sorry.
That's yep, that's a tricky one, a very tricky one. Okay, I think they're good. Don, maybe you can answer this question. I was asked tonight if a person has a land trust, named himself as the trustee and beneficiary, then died 2 years later, what happens to the trusts? Is property of the trust an issue for the family? Is that a concern?
Well, if there's a successor trustee, the successor trustee would take over. If there's a if there's a beneficiary, like a contingent beneficiary, that would be ideal. Otherwise, it's going to have to go through probate to figure out who owns the little bugger.
Okay, I agree. So that's tricky. And maybe come to our summit, we'll go into more detail on that, the estate planning side.
Yep.
All right, so the question is, if we haven't filed, should we wait? And I think the answer is maybe. It's hard to say black or white, guys, here. The answer is on their website, it's telling you it is not currently required. Do with that what you will. We can't give you black or white, yes or no answer, but look at their website. Don pulled it up right there. You are not currently required to file with the FinCEN and are not subject to liability right now.
Gonna wait on
Me
that
too.
for whatever that's worth. I'm
Take
gonna
that
wait
for
and see
what
what
it
happens.
is.
Okay.
Okay, I think that's it, Don. We answered the rest of these. It looks like we're good. Thanks so much, Don. Great info. Sadly, you know, more to come on this, and we suggest coming to the summit. Hopefully, we know more about this in February.
We will keep you updated as this all unfolds, as the ball goes to the other side of the court and then back again on whatever's going to happen. We'll keep you updated. So stay tuned, pay attention. It's a big deal. It's a big deal, but you know what? It's not as big as I think most of us have got our little relax, enjoy, have a great year. Um, Continue to make money, do what you do, but invest in real estate, invest in the market, whatever you're doing. Don't let this be a major concern because right now we're not required to comply. We'll keep you updated. We'll be
Yep.
in their corner for you. Okay.
Watch for some emails from us. If we have some updates, we'll let you know. We'll do another webinar. Also, come to the summit. Always welcome to. I'll put the link in the chat again for you guys. I see a few of you asking questions. Yes, this is online. Yes, you can register at protectwealth.com. That's probably the best place to go, is just protectwealth.com. Awesome, Don. Great webinar. Thank you so much.
It's not a good year to unsubscribe from our emails or something. Just we'll keep you updated. Anyway, thank you all for being here, and you've had such good questions, and I've tried to be clear. I hope this has been helpful. The recording will go out tomorrow if something wasn't clear, or you can give us a call. All right, Kendall, thanks for everything you did in the background. Students, thanks for sticking with us. Have a
My
great
pleasure. Thanks
night.
everyone for being here. Look forward to seeing you at the summit.
All right,
Thanks, Don.
bye bye.